U.S. President Joe Biden on a mission to convince voters across the U.S. of the validity of his economic plan. Biden touted Friday's jobs report as Bidenomics in action. Can voters really credit Biden's policy action for the economy's resilience? Claudia, Sahm is still with us, Sahm Consulting Founder and former Federal Reserve Board economist. You have written about Bidenomics as well. And I know that you have been a proponent of this sort of fiscal support that we have seen in the economy really since the beginning of the pandemic, off and on, but mostly on. Do you think that so-called Bidenomics has been a success? And if it is, how do you sort of get the American people to get the memo?
Yeah, first, we haven't written the book yet on what happened the last 3 years. So I think it's premature to give credit or blame. And frankly, there's too often the idea that the president is in charge of the economy. Their economy. So like they're judged against that, and that the Fed is the only one that can fight inflation. And then we push back on that. So I do think Biden economics, at least as he stated it now, it's also this, we can get to a better place, an even better place than we were before this recovery. And I do think there's some things in the works. A lot of these industrial policy programs will help build resiliency in the economy. That's going to help a lot, but this will be far after he could even, be in office, right? So I think it's a good start. I don't really like the term Bidenomics because I don't think we should attribute too much. But on this little more to your question, they are not going to win voters over on this, right? This is not. It's going to take too many years. It's kind of subtle. Hey, it'd be worse if we didn't do that. So I think he should do the policies. But I know, and I'm not a politician, but I don't think given the divided country and all with inflation and things that have happened, I don't see them giving Biden any credit for this.
What is the timeline that we would actually see effectiveness in some of the policy that has moved forward? From your perspective and an estimation and some of the dollar figures that have been tossed out there by the administration and even those that have been put into action right now?
Right. So, I mean, I don't put a whole lot of weight on the rhetoric from a politician. I mean, they need to do it. And it was interesting in his speech, most of what he pointed to were the infrastructure, the CHIPS Act, the Inflation Reduction Act. He was really pushing like how that will improve growth and just resiliency. And those will not pay off for years. Right, like he's planting the seeds in an important way, but this ain't going to happen by November or whatever time next year he's, trying to push the package forward. I am a little concerned that the rescue plan gets so little weight. It contributed to inflation, but it was nowhere the whole of what we've seen, and it did a lot of good. It did a lot of relief. The child tax credit was in there, but I get it. It also coincided with an increase in inflation. But like I said, more broadly, the people who don't like what he's doing now, they're not going to like what they're, getting started in the next few years.
And Claudia, when you look at what Biden has done on this front, what do you think is the most significant structural change of those measures that we're mentioning here? And what do you think is still the most significant change that should be done that hasn't yet been done by him or by anybody for that matter?
Yeah, so I think the most encouraging was the Inflation Reduction Act. That we have the first green energy or transition energy policy written down, right? This can help buffer. Gas prices will go up again sometime. If we're less dependent on the international market, then it won't be as disruptive as it was. So there really are pieces of that are very exciting. And I think the infrastructure and the CHIPS Act, not to, give them second fiddle. But in terms of what didn't get through were the investments in people. Like really persistent investments, whether that's the child care or the sick leave. I mean, there's just all these kind of things that the labor market was so tight. Workers could go in, even low wage workers, and be like, I'll come work with you, but you're going to pay me more. Or you're going to give me benefits. And that moment is over, right? Like, because there wasn't institutions to keep it going. So I think that's where politicians need to come together. I mean, if children, I can't think of as that's like the best example of investment we have, and that was like one of the ones that got left on the cutting room floor.
Yeah, seriously. Just lastly, while we have you, as we think about some of the other kind of contenders that are out there trying to knock Biden off the top spot in 24, or at least as we shape up this general election in 2024 that's set to come. Where do both parties need to find some type of uniformity in policy that has been put on thus far, or that has been moved forward, where spending has initiated, where there is a need, at least in this country, both economically, but perhaps infrastructurally as well?
Yeah, we actually had Infrastructure Week. I mean, wow, like they got, and that was a bipartisan, getting the infrastructure through. So it's clear there's an understanding of, we don't want our pipes to have, water that hurts people. We want to have Wi-Fi. We want to have, like, the list of things that those more supply investments had, I'm all for. I mean, some are really hard, like industrial policy, to do well. Another thing that I've seen the administration doing that I worry about a little bit is taking one thing that passed and trying to push something else into it that you wanted. So like the CHIPS Act requiring semiconductor companies to have on-site childcare or some kind of childcare. Like, I believe in both of those, separate, but it's really, I worry that they're making an impossible task for themselves, trying to layer one on the other.
Well, we'll see if there's any chance of them getting some of this done, at least in isolation, even in the next several years. Claudia, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. Thanks for your time this morning. Claudia Sahm, Sahm Consulting Founder and former Federal Reserve Board economist. Thanks.